should still dream great dreams, but we should get the basics right first. Thank you very much, and I look forward to this discussion, and I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. By the way, I am also the official photographer for the Parkrose Business Association. That's why I'm stepping out and taking your photographs. That's what's going on there. Now, the members of the Parkrose Business Association and the Board of Directors have selected 3 questions to be answered by each of you. Please keep your answer to 2 minutes. These are 2-minute answer questions, and we're going to be starting out with Eileen Brady, then it'll go to Charlie Hales, and then Jefferson Smith. Now, this question may be longer than your answer, but I'm here to do it as they've asked. But it's a very interesting question, and I didn't know some of this information. Someone did some research, and they said, the city of Portland, while reportedly spending $900,000 to build 13.5 miles of bike routes, $665,000 to add 8 permanent employees to oversee streetcars, $200,000 for Rose Festival preparation work, and providing a $15,000 scholarship to the Ralvolution in Los Angeles. The question's coming. The Portland Transportation Bureau has put off plans to overhaul deteriorating roads and its 5,000-mile system until at least 2017. As mayor, do you plan to reverse this policy by spending more on road repair throughout the city before 2017? If not, why not? Ms. Brady?
It's inconceivable to me that we have a transportation bureau that has announced we are not going to pave key roads over the next several years. What is the Transportation Bureau actually for? We have to focus more on maintenance and safety. As my father always said, 80% of success in life is maintenance. And we have overcommitted to too many new shiny projects without having a maintenance fund. We have not committed to building the capital structure to actually maintain our assets. We're so focused on new things. So we will commit to building a capital-based budget, which really should have been done 10, 15 years ago. If we had, we may have gotten more sidewalks installed and paved more roads in East Portland, which has suffered dramatically. We also we commit to projects that we can't operate. So we have a streetcar that has gone on the east side of the river now, and we built it, but we did not budget for the operating costs. Believe it or not, we're going to spend somewhere between $1 million to $3 million of Transportation Bureau money actually operating the new version, the new part of the streetcar, because we hadn't planned the operating costs. We have to, what I bring to this race is a business orientation that says we have got to be able to actually balance the books. We can't just bet on the new projects. We have to build in the operating costs. We have to build in the maintenance costs, and we have to work for these livable programs out in East Portland. In East Portland, you have a legitimate complaint about not getting the services you need from the city. One of the great things about this race is that actually all of us are talking about East Portland. And there's a real opportunity to put transportation in East Portland on the map. Take it.
I've been very involved, as I mentioned, with Airport Max in creating the transportation system that we have today, and I'm really proud of it. It's given us a better city, we're more livable, and those projects paid off, particularly Airport Max with the whole Cascade Station development in terms of new development, jobs, and prosperity. So those projects, I think, are having lasting value for the city. And as much as I believe in those projects and believe in that agenda, there is agreement here that maintenance, as I mentioned, has got to be job one. Again, we did 5 times as many lane miles of streets every year when I had the Bureau, and they had half the budget. So that's a matter of setting priorities and not getting distracted by pet projects and not trying to do things with transportation money that don't have anything to do with transportation. And then secondly, on the street issue, yes, there are 60 miles of unpaved streets in this city, a lot of them in East Portland, not exclusively in East Portland. There's southwest and southeast. Look, get a block off of Woodstock in southeast and you'll see what I mean. So this is a problem across the city, and the city's been depending on a dysfunctional tool, the local improvement district system, to try to get those streets built. At the current rate of progress using LIDs, what these things are called, we'll get it all done in about 4,000 years. because very few people can afford to build their own street after the fact. So we need to dump that idea, take this on as a long-term capital program, build it into the budget, be realistic with people that even with a better managed budget, it's going to take us 20 years at probably at a minimum to get that 60 miles of streets done. But make a commitment to it, build it into the base budget, stick to it, don't get distracted by other things, don't spend water, sewer, or transportation funds, which are enterprise funds, on things that should be paid for or compete for the general fund.
And Mr. Smith.
We have a beat.
I just started. I'll give you 4 seconds.
Thanks, buddy. Is that your beat? It's impressive. So agreed maintenance first, particularly that kind of maintenance that if not done, it's much more expensive going forward. But let's have some perspective on reality. So it is not just because of Sam Adams, who I've had pretty public debates with, and pretty public disagreements with about resource distribution, about failure to provide adequate resources fairly across the city. But it actually isn't Sam Adams' fault that the state transportation package, I was one of the few Democrats in the state house to vote against the gas tax increase because I knew what it was doing, what it wasn't going to do, not only for our part of town, but for our town generally. But it's not his fault that that was projected to provide $300 million, now it's $160 million. So we're going to have to find ways to save money. And that means not only talking about being careful with big projects, but in fact, one of the distinctions in this race is that I'm applying that discipline. That I'm not saying build, baby, build on the Columbia River Crossing. I'm not saying it on the Sustainability Center. I am saying trim middle management. I am looking for other ways to even pave roads more cheaply. And even if there's a way to get 60 miles of unpaved roads to be other things than just roads that require sidewalks and are $1 million a mile. So I think there's ways we've got to analyze it so we can find ways to save money. We're also going to have to come to grips with how can we think about a set of revenue structures that keeps up with reality. Right now, gas tax revenues are not keeping track with transportation needs. And part of that is because seniors are driving less. So we've got to figure out how to allow for shorter trips, how to plan the whole city. And is that my sign for done or 30 seconds?
That's 30 seconds.
Thanks. So is seeing the whole picture. Because just about every election, so people come around and talk about East Portland, just about every election. But then the problem is, once they get in there, they're thinking more about downtown businesses and a little bit less about Parkrose businesses. So we got to make sure it's actually time to distribute resources, that our neighbors are in our ear, and not only today.
Thank you very much. Next question will go with Mr. Hale starting. It seems that our water and sewer bills have become the new property tax. Continuing rate increases place both business owners and residents in financial jeopardy. What will you do to reduce the amount of water and sewer rates? If you won't do anything, why not?
Well, yeah, I mentioned this, and I'll talk a little bit more about some other aspects of it. Clearly, we've got to go through the rates line by line. This has really not been done effectively in the last several years across the board in the city budget. Mayor Katz, who I'm proud has endorsed me, was the last real effective budgeting mayor that we've had. And it shows, not just in the water and sewer rates, I think, but in other failures of discipline, as Jefferson said, in the budget process. So first we go through the line items and we look at every cost. We make sure that the capital program is reasonable and as modest as we can keep it while still keeping up with the needs of a long-term system that's been around for 100 years and going to be around for many more. Secondly, another real big issue for the city is, let's say we have, put it politely, we have frayed relationships with our suburban neighbors at the moment. And some of them buy water from us in very large quantities through wholesale contracts. If we don't repair those relationships with the Tualatin Valley Water District and some of the other water districts that buy water from us, we'll have another rate shock coming. And then third, on the sewer side, we have this very large combined sewer overflow obligation that's now actually starting to diminish in terms of its effect on rates. You know, it's huge. It was $1.4 billion. So we're going to be paying that off for a while yet, no matter who's in office. But we need to look very carefully and do a responsible job of it, but make sure that the cost of cleaning up the Portland Harbor, Portland will have part of that cost, doesn't cause another huge rate shock. So there are things that we need to do to avoid further increases, and we need to go through every line item to make sure that we're spending money appropriately, and then not use water money as an ATM to build a Rose Festival headquarters, which the current council did.
Mr. Smith is next.
I'm sorry, this is the.
No, it's fine. You're doing great, man. It's fantastic. I appreciate it.
You got a client on the other.
No, I just don't want to interfere with the music.
We may not be high-tech, but we are fair.
You have to understand. You have to understand where I live. This does not offend me at all, man. So one, yeah, some of that is just about operational discipline. I've said the thing about middle management, but I haven't explained what I mean, so let me do that. Because the Water Bureau is one of the ways, in fact, I just heard it in one of the now 76 house parties we've done around the city from a former employee of the Water Bureau, that according to the city auditor, right now, the staff management ratio in the city is 6-to-1. He's saying in the Water Bureau, Jeff, they're lying if they say it's 6-to-1. It's at best 3-to-1. I carried a bill on the State House floor to set an aspirational level of staff to management ratios of 11-to-1. We can save real money by doing a similar thing in the city. Second, we can improve rate review. I do believe there should be electoral accountability so you can vote people out of office if they raise your rates and don't have a good reason for it. But I think there should be better and more disciplined rate review before any rates can be increased. Third, I think we have to have line by line budget attention, as Charlie said. But to make my case a little bit, of people who've actually had to work on tough budgets during tough times when we are really cutting budgets. I've had to serve on the budget subcommittee that oversees the budget of the governor, the secretary of state, and the treasurer's office. I've had to spend real time cutting budgets and finding ways to save money over the last 4 years, and I absolutely agree that's going to be something we've got to do. Let me say something else though. Sometimes we're going to have to find times where we say no to the federal government. Right now the federal government is asking us to pay a bunch of money on treatment plants to clean up cryptosporidium we don't have. And so leveraging relationships, like Jeff Merkley, who I succeeded in the State House, leveraging relationships with state partners, both in agencies and in the legislature, to make sure that we get off the hook for otherwise having to pay for things we shouldn't have to pay for, is going to be something else the mayor's going to have the willingness and courage to do, and I'll do those things. So those are some of the ways that we can save a little bit of money.
And Ms. Brady.
So as I mentioned before, I would set on the independent review panel on whether or not to cover the reservoirs. Don't judge me by what I say, judge me by what I did. Back in 2004, when we were looking at a 9/11 terrorist fear factor, it was a bold and radical thing to do, is to sit on a panel, build a majority that then recommended that the city overturn its decision to cover the reservoirs. We did it then. I've stuck with it since. I've actually helped work to actually make sure that we got the waiver on the treatment plant, which we actually did get. And we're now still faced with covering the reservoirs. Let me tell you something. I would not have voted for the rate increase that was proposed last year, period. It included preparations for covering the reservoirs. They were anticipating that. I would have taken the risk that we will be able to move through the EPA process and actually get the waiver on the whole thing. Lastly, you think the rates are bad now. It's the Superfund harbor cleanup that has yet to come to everybody's attention. It is potentially a $500 million bill for the city of Portland that is going to probably be recommended to sit on the sewer rates side of this equation. The city has not stepped up and provided the leadership that's required to be part of this conversation. The city has stayed in the background. We have to provide the leadership, work with the industries, work with the environmentalists, work with the tribes, and work with the port so that we can actually have the most cost-effective approach with community consensus of cleaning up the river to the level that is most effective for all of us. But the city has to get involved. I've built unusual coalitions for many, many years. I'm not afraid of big, bold, complex issues, and this one is sitting right in front of us. In fact, I will assign this project to one of the commissioners. Like you assign a bureau, this project is so significant and so consequential that it needs to be assigned to its own commissioner. Thank you, I hear the beep.
And thank you very much for delivering precise and concise answers. Yes, Mr. Smith will start first on our last question. And that is, when elected mayor of Portland, what will you do specifically to improve the business climate in Parkrose?
Several things. One of the most important things we have to do is making sure, as I mentioned briefly, resource distribution is done smartly. Occasionally there's federal dollars that PDC or the city distributes. Very often they're city dollars. I think we have to move beyond just mapping where we're deploying resources and making sure we're deploying them fairly. Making sure that, for instance, when we're doing that mapping and doing that analysis, we're not just counting dollar for dollar, but understanding that investment in a park or a road is different than investment in a gateway domestic violence shelter or in a methadone clinic. We have to make sure we are building livable neighborhoods and promoting economic diversity and not allowing merely economic segregation to segregate poverty in one pocket of the city, which is essentially what the city of Portland's been doing for the last 25 years. That's the most important thing we can do to improve the business climate in this neighborhood and in the neighborhoods that I represent already, that I represent currently in the legislature, because we need not only jobs here, we need customers. And we need an economic development plan beyond strip clubs